Stardew Valley 1.6 added a plethora of endgame content, most of which is contained in the brand new Mastery system. This is a super in-depth compilation of all of the Mastery videos I've made, along with small corrections and any changes that may have came in future updates. Hope it helps. To unlock Mastery, you'll need to hit level 10 in all 5 skills. For my personal playthrough, this ended up being around mid-spring of year 2, shortly after I unlocked Ginger Island. That isn't going to be the case for everyone, depending on your playstyle. I'm just giving you an idea of what point in the game it'll be available. Once you've done this, a door in Cindersap Forest will be unlocked. It's hinted at in secret note number 27. It's sneakily hidden behind this tree near the sewers, right around where you find Robin's lost axe. Upon entering, you can find this note on the ground. It reads, "Dear Pesky," my dear player's name. If you're reading this note, you've found the secret room I've prepared for you. Within these walls are tips, recipes, and even some of my most cherished tools. All the very best from the many happy years I spent in the valley. By coming this far, you've proven that you possess the skill and wisdom to make good use of these powerful secrets. I hope my discoveries help you in your journey to making your farm name a shining star of the whole world. Make me proud. From Grandpa. What lies before you in this room are 5 paths of mastery, which you will unlock one after the other after hitting certain thresholds of experience. Your first unlock is at 10,000 experience, with each goal afterwards increasing by 5,000, so 15 and then 20,000 and 25,000, so on and so forth. To get all 5 masteries, you're going to have to earn 100,000 experience altogether. To put it into perspective, to reach level 10 in any given skill, you need 15,000 experience. So at this point, you've already gotten to at least 75,000 total. Unfortunately, it doesn't start counting until the moment you get level 10 in your last skill. I should also mention, it doesn't matter what skill you get the experience in. All experience goes into the same lump sum. So you may be wondering, what's the best way to get all of that experience? For most players, I think you'll probably just want to continue playing the way you always have. Almost every action gives you some form of experience, but if you're looking for specifics, here's a couple of things you could do. For farming, it's no surprise that starfruit go crazy for this, although they only give half the amount of experience they normally give when put towards mastery, and that goes for any crops that you harvest. So starfruit, which would normally give 43 farming experience, now give 21.5. Even with that though, they're still really good. Unfortunately, that half experience gain extends to animals as well. It's not just crops, so coops and barns are really not good at all for getting experience. The only time I would recommend going for foraging experience is during the green rain day in summer. These large clumps of weeds give you 15 experience each when cut, and the abundance of trees makes it easy to get them for experience as well. Each tree that's cut down gives 13 experience. If you head to the secret woods, the 6 stumps there will give you 150 experience altogether each day. And of course, any stumps you cut down on your farm if you're playing on the forest farm will also give you 25 experience. Fishing is surprisingly good for getting experience, since higher quality fish give more experience. Experience is starting to not sound like a real word. Harder fish also give more experience, but a perfect catch gives a huge 2.4 times multiplier. So what you want to do is find a balance between difficulty and being able to pull off perfect catches consistently. On the Stardew Wiki, you can sort out all the fish by difficulty to try and pin one down. Once you find your sweet spot, you can use targeted bait to catch that fish as much as you can. Personally, when I used this method, I went for blue discus, as they can be caught in any season, and they also sell for a good amount of gold. My bobber setup was 2 cork bobbers, just to make sure that they absolutely didn't escape. If I get a perfect catch, the fish will be iridium quality anyway, so I didn't have to use quality bobbers. Also, be aware that if you catch any extra fish from using wild bait or challenge bait, that does not contribute to the experience, so you have no reason not to use the targeted bait. Now, if I were to put one method of getting experience above all of the others, it would have to be a deep dive into the Skull Cavern for a couple of reasons. First, every iridium node you break gives 50 experience. And the deeper you go, the more iridium nodes you'll find. So doing the classic plan of just building up a ton of jade, trading them all for staircases at the Desert Trader on Sunday, and then immediately going as deep as you can, still works great. Make sure you bring as many bombs as you can so that you can break as many rocks as you can. Exploding next to a good clump of iridium nodes could give you hundreds of experience all at once. Anytime you see any gem node, they're always worth going for. Diamond nodes give 150 experience each. Ruby and emeralds give 80, aquamarine and jade gives 40 experience, and amethyst and topaz gives 16, which is still a lot more than your average rock. Any gold nodes you find are still worth going for, they're 18 experience each. And if you happen to go during the desert festival, calico egg nodes give 50 experience each. Don't go out of your way to fight monsters, they give like no experience compared to the rocks, which is weird in my opinion, but whatever. The method takes a lot of setup, but it blows everything else out of the water. And one last method, if the bookseller is ever in town, go in and check to see if they have the Book of Stars for sale. It has a 25% chance to appear. It costs 15,000 gold. Maybe that's a lot for you, maybe it's not. If it's not, using it will give you 250 experience in every skill, which is 1,250 total. And while we're on the topic of books, remember that reading any books that you've already read before will give you 250 experience in that skill. So if you find any of them, just pop them. If you're ever wondering where you're sitting at for mastery experience, go onto your skills tab, and that's what that giant bar is at the bottom. It'll show you the number of experience you have, and on the right it'll show you how many mastery levels you've already hit. We went over the basics of mastery in the last video, and this time we'll be talking specifically about farming mastery. Just so you know, every mastery will provide either 2 crafting recipes or 1 crafting recipe and a new tool, then 1 buff that affects drop rates. All of the masteries are required for perfection, so don't let that influence your decision. Without further ado, let's go over the 3 rewards for farming mastery, starting with the Iridium Scythe. As you may know, the scythe isn't upgraded like all of the other tools. Instead, you just start out with the regular scythe, you get a gold scythe from the quarry cave, which more efficiently clears grass, gives you more hay from said grass, but has the same reach. Finally, you get the Iridium Scythe here. It once again has a slightly increased range, and now will always harvest hay from a tile of grass, up from the 75% chance of the gold scythe. It also deals more damage, 20 each hit, which I suppose could knock out a weaker enemy in a pinch. The big draw, however, is that it can harvest any crop, not just wheat and amaranth like usual. What you're watching right now is a comparison of clearing off an 8x8 field of crops with the scythe and by hand. It's a lot faster, especially on console where you can't use the cursor easily to harvest a lot of crops at once. It also does work on potted plants and any forageables grown from wild seeds. And while it does work with your foraging professions, unfortunately you will not get any experience. So stick to harvesting forageables by hand if you're still trying to get mastery levels. And I did test, it doesn't work on naturally occurring forageables other than the spring onions for some reason. Fun little use case here. If you wanted to, you could plant trellis crops 3 rows thick, and while you normally wouldn't be able to reach the center for harvesting, now you can. Unfortunately, you still can't enchant it, which is a bit of a shame because the haymaker enchantment would have gone crazy. Interesting to note that the Iridium Scythe is so good that Junimos had to get a buff in response. Putting grapes into the new dehydrator makes raisins, and when raisins are put into a Junimo hut, the Junimos will have a 15% chance to double harvest a crop, so there's still a reason to use them. All in all, this reward makes the best moneymaker in the game a lot more manageable, so it's one of the better unlocks. Next, the only crafting recipe in this mastery is the Statue of Blessings, and oh boy, what a crafting recipe it is. 999 sap, 999 fiber, 999 stone, and 333 moss. Honestly, it's not as bad as it looks. At this late in the game, getting 999 sap and stone is inevitable. You can get 333 moss pretty easily by spending your green rain day in summer foraging, but for the fiber, you may want to dedicate a week or so of your farm to fiber seeds. If you want to get all 999 fiber from fiber seeds, you will need to plant 182 of them. And yes, using the grapes on Junimos works for them as well. So with a recipe like that, it's gotta be crazy, right? Well, it's okay. Each day, the statue will give you 1 of 7 possible blessings. You can't reset your day to change which blessing you get, and even if you have multiple statues, they'll all give the same blessing, so there's no way to cheese it. Let's get the most complicated blessing out of the way first. The Blessing of the Butterfly. this will spawn a prismatic butterfly somewhere in the valley. The rules are, it will be outside, and it's in the main valley, so not the desert or Ginger Island. Once you find it, if it's wandered out of bounds a bit, you can get it again by re-entering the area, and then it'll respawn near land. Grabbing it will give you 0.5% of the total gold you've earned up to 50,000, alongside a chance to get a prismatic shard. To get that 50,000, you will need to earn 10 million gold, which would already set you well on your way to perfection level money. I want to be clear, that's a nice clump of change just for walking around and finding a butterfly, but it's very late game. Your chance for getting the prismatic shard is affected by your daily luck. On average, it's about a 5% chance, but on a particularly bad luck day, that chance could be 0%. At most, it'll be a 15% chance or a 17.5% chance if you have the special charm from secret note number 20. That's the one that you get next to Jojamart by giving it a rabbit's foot. Now for the simpler blessings. The blessing of energy gives you infinite energy for the day. I don't find this very impactful this late into the game, especially after collecting most of the star drops. The blessing of fangs gives an extra 10% chance to crit. Note that this will be taken into account before any crit chance multipliers, like the scout profession. So essentially, if you have the scout profession, this is a 15% increase. The blessing of friendship gives you 60 friendship points instead of 20 when you talk to someone. It doesn't affect gifting friendship. As a side note, the Friendship 101 book that can be found in the ticket machine increases all friendship gain by 10%, so it's 66 friendship points instead of 22 if you've read it. As a reference, a full heart is 250 friendship points. The Blessing of Speed increases your movement speed by 0.5. This is a 10% increase of your normal running speed. That's half the buff that the coffee gives you, and it's equivalent to the buff of the 2 Way of the Wind books added together. Note that this also affects your weapon swinging speed. The Blessing of Waters makes the first 3 fish you hook easier to catch. Essentially, it'll lower their difficulty by 50%, or if it's a legendary fish, by 25%. That's kind of hard to conceptualize. So if you hook a catfish, it's now about as difficult as a bream. If you hook the legend, it's now about as hard as a void salmon. Still difficult, but not nearly as much. And last, the Blessing of Luck, which increases your luck by 1. It's the luck stat, not your daily luck, so it has all the same effects that, say, wearing a luck ring does. You're more likely to find ladders, you have a higher chance of finding gem nodes, things like that. Interesting note, the Blessing of the Butterfly will not occur on rainy days, so pop rain totems if you're on the hunt for one of the other blessings. And for the final reward, you can now find animal crackers. What these animal crackers do is double the produce of any animal, including fish ponds, but excluding pigs, because they're already crazy enough. You can find them in many ways: skull cavern chests, artifact spots, even just shaking a tree. But if you want to find as many as you can fast, I recommend fishing for treasure chests. There are 7% drop in chests and 9% in golden chests from the Fishing Mastery path. With a proper build of magnets, treasure hunter bobbers, and luck buffs, you can have about a 65% chance to get a chest on each fish. Another way is to use the treasure totems from Foraging Mastery. It's about a 0.9% chance to spawn out of an artifact spot. A treasure totem spawns 16 artifact spots, so you have about a 14.4% chance to find it from each treasure totem. The way the animal cracker works is you give it to an animal, you can tell which ones have it if you check the animals tab, and from then on, forever, you will get 2 of their product whenever you pick it up. If you sell that animal, or it dies from being outside, or you empty out that fish pond, you will essentially lose the cracker and you are not refunded. Here it is. Are y'all ready? The chart. So on this chart, we have the animal represented, how much it takes to buy them, which profession is ideal to make the most money from them, which products will be selling, and then I've split profit into 2 groups. The first one is profit at minimum friendship, minimum mood, you haven't done anything with the animal, and the right side is profit at max friendship and max mood, and in some cases, max daily luck. And I do want to go through every single animal and tell you exactly how those calculations work, because some of them get very complicated. I'm looking at you, rabbit. Starting with our chicken. At no friendship, it always gives a regular egg. At max friendship, it always gives a large egg. The difference is a regular mayonnaise and a gold mayonnaise. Simple, easy. The same can be said about the cows and goats. When they're at minimum friendship, they give small milk. Max Friendship, Big Milk, which makes a normal and gold quality cheese respectively. Funny enough, cows are just better than goats. I don't know what that's all about, but that's how it is. Then we have a couple of animals who don't get better with more friendship, this being the void chicken, the dinosaur, and the golden chicken. This is because even though you do get higher quality eggs out of them at higher friendship, they always turn into normal quality mayonnaise when put into a mayonnaise machine. I just want to point out void chickens real quick. They are very good for requiring no friendship. 770 gold a day outclasses all animals except for the super expensive ones and the super late game ones. Then we go to ducks and rabbits. You'll notice that the duck actually sells for more money at low friendship, and that's just because duck mayonnaise always sells for more than duck feathers, and you don't have a chance to get duck feathers at low friendship, so don't pet your ducks. If you're worried about money, that is. Duck feathers are still a great gift. The same does not apply to the rabbit, even though it's set up kind of similarly, and that's because having higher quality wool from the rabbit does actually matter, so you do want to have higher friendship. And we use Coop Master here because it raises the average quality of wool and rabbit's feet, and rabbit's feet aren't affected by the artisan profession, so on average you're going to make more from Coop Master. Then getting to sheep, we use the shepherd profession because it allows them to produce every single day when they're at max friendship, and once again it raises the average quality of wool. Pigs, same as they've always been, they're not affected by animal crackers. You do need two different professions. You want gatherer from foraging so that you get a 20% chance for double harvest of truffles, and then artisan from farming to increase the price of oil. Ostrich eggs have a unique quality where they're put into the mayonnaise machine. They actually retain the quality that the egg was, so you do benefit from gaining friendship with them. Golden chicken, while it's a super high number, remember you can only get it after perfection, so it's not the most useful in most regular playthroughs. And lastly, we have a lava eel pond with the animal cracker. This is only if you sell the roe, not any of the other products. And as you can see, it also does very well for itself, although it's quite a bit to set up compared to most animals. As you can see, nothing still quite eclipses pigs, but consider that pigs can't be used in winter or on rainy days, and they don't benefit from the auto grabber. Suddenly, things like the sheep are starting to look kind of appealing. Welcome back to the Mastery series. Previously, we covered Farming Mastery, and today, we're covering Foraging. So in some competitive games, stay with me, there's often three classes: DPS, Tank, and Support. The Foraging stat, when it comes to Mastery, is essentially the support option of the bunch. Instead of adding these wild, powerful ways to make money, it adds utility that will help you clean up the other parts of the game. The first reward you get for Foraging Mastery is the Mystic Tree Seed recipe. To craft it, you need 5 of each of the other tree seeds, excluding mossy tree seeds. Mahogany seeds tend to be the hardest part of this recipe, so if you're short on them, you can get more by cutting these stumps and slaying the slimes in the secret woods. Or you can trade 20 coal for one at the raccoon shop. This seed will grow into a mystic tree, and when cut down, it gives hardwood just like a mahogany tree. It doesn't spread seeds like other trees, and when placed near a mushroom log, they increase the chance of getting a purple mushroom. Side tangent, mushroom log probabilities are very complicated. Basically, as long as you have at least 2 nearby mystic trees and no other types of trees, you have around a 60% chance to get a purple mushroom. And the more trees you have, the more mushrooms you get, up to 5 with 10 nearby trees. So 10 mystic trees gives you 5 mushrooms with a 60% chance of them being purple. This is the best setup for mushroom logs out there. Mystic trees grow slower than any other non-fruit tree, a 15% chance of growing each night, which matches the mahogany tree, but with fertilizer, it only has a 30% chance to grow, which is half the chance of the mahogany tree. What truly makes the mystic tree special is that it produces mystic syrup every 7 days when tapped. While it's not the craziest moneymaker, it can be decent with a heavy tapper and the tapper profession, and it can be traded for fairy dust at the raccoon shop. But it's mostly used as an ingredient in the next crafting recipe. The second recipe you get from Mastery is the treasure totem. It costs 5 hardwood, 10 moss, and 1 mystic syrup. The effect itself is very simple. It will spawn 16 artifact spots in a circle around you. Note that these spots can only spawn on dirt, sand, or snow, so choose the place you use it carefully. Also, it will always give you specifically artifact spots. You're not going to get those new seed spots. So even though it's a simple effect, there are so many different items you can get from artifact spots, from geodes to forageables to, well, artifacts. Because of this, I decided to make an entire chart with locations and useful item spawns. All of the percentages assume that it's not winter or spring, since all of the winter forageables and rice shoots can lower the chance of anything else spawning. If it's spring, that's not too bad because rice shoots only have a 6% chance to pop out, but in winter, it's like a 50% chance for winter forageables, so definitely don't recommend using them then. I've put all of these items on this chart in the area where they have the highest chance to spawn. And for the case of a couple of items that have an equal percent chance to spawn in multiple areas, I put them in the area that had the most dirt space to use the treasure totems on. Most of the time that was in the mountains, since there's these huge dirt spots around Robin's house. There's also a couple of items that I put the artifact trove icon next to because they are much more common in artifact troves than they are in the ground, particularly for the Elvish Jewelry, Ancient Sword, and Ancient Drum, which all have under a % chance to show up. I also want to point out that these percentages are from the wiki, and I did test a lot of them, but for a couple specifically on Ginger Island, I'm not 100% sure how they got them, because let me tell you this right now, you do not always get an Omni Geode out of every artifact spot you open on Ginger Island. While you do get a lot of them, it is not guaranteed. It may just be the case that it always shows up if something else important doesn't show up, I'm not really sure. If you're looking for a way for this to be used for money making, use it anywhere on Ginger Island. You have a really good chance of getting multiple Omni Geodes, which you can double by having the Generous enchantment on the hoe. You can then trade 5 Omni Geodes for 1 treasure trove, and then sell whatever you get when you bust open the treasure trove for profit, specifically after you've read the Treasure Appraisal Guidebook, which can be found in the treasure troves itself. One pretty obscure use is that it's great if you just started the Keys crop quest, since every spot will have a 25% chance to drop anywhere from 2 to 5 key beans. Double that if you have the Generous enchantment, of course, and you will be swimming in them. Thank you, Travis McElroy, for sending this tip in. Real people watch these videos, huh? It was also pointed out several times in the comments, so thanks to you as well. And last, you'll now also have a chance to find golden mystery boxes while out and about. They actually carry a lot of the same items that regular mystery boxes do, but with a much higher chance of giving some of the rarer items, such as one of the universal loves, good cooking recipes, and experience books. Meanwhile, the regular mystery boxes are bloated by relatively bad cooking recipes and the juicy 12% chance of mixed seeds. If you're specifically hunting for them, they're found in a lot of the same ways that regular mystery boxes are. The 2 best methods, in my opinion, have to be fishing for treasure chests on a good luck day. They're found in 17% of them on ideal conditions. Or my personal go-to, combat. So the chance to get them from an enemy may not seem that common, the chance itself is pretty low, but consider that each point of luck is an extra 0.8% chance. On a perfect luck day, that's an extra 1% or 1.25% if you have the special charm, the item you get from giving a rabbit's foot to the Joja truck. So say you pop a magic rock candy and a ginger ale, you're wearing 2 lucky rings and on a good luck day. The chance is now 8.6% for every enemy. And guess what? Burglar's Ring. That effectively doubles the loot, bringing us to a 17.2% chance. That's pretty much an endless stream of them. You'll be tossing them in the trash to make space for the topaz, they're that common. Also, kinda related to the golden mystery boxes, there's one bonus effect you get from Foraging Mastery, and that's a couple of extra trades at the raccoon shop. You can now trade 3 mystery boxes for 1 golden mystery box, and then 20 golden mystery boxes for 1 magic rock candy. So if you use that combat method we just went over, this is by far the easiest way to obtain magic rock candy. And then with the luck buffs from the magic rock candy, you can use them to get even more golden mystery boxes, just like God intended. Now maybe you see what I mean about it being a support skill. Treasure totems provide all sorts of crafting materials, golden mystery boxes provide items like seeds and cooked items for other skills, and honestly, I think that having easy access to magic rock candy is just as beneficial to mining as the mining mastery itself is. I'm not sure if I could put these masteries in any type of tier list, since it really depends on what type of content you enjoy, but I think Foraging Mastery is near the top no matter what you like to do. So far, we've talked about the farming and forage mastery in the previous videos. Now it's time for my personal favorite, fishing. For this mastery, you get a new tool, the Advanced Iridium Rod, a new crafting recipe for challenge bait, and a chance to now find golden treasure chests while fishing. First, we're going to talk about the challenge bait, since I'll be talking about it in the Advanced Iridium Rod section as well. As a crafting recipe unlocked in Mastery, it's surprisingly cheap at just 5 bone fragments and 2 moss for 5 of them. If you're having trouble finding bone fragments, you can usually find a bunch of bone nodes at Ginger Island dig site, and they drop from skeletons on floors 71 to 79 of the mines and in the Quarry Cave. As the name implies, it's a new type of bait, and it comes with the same bite speed bonus as wild bait, cutting the average bite time down by 63.5%, which is only beaten out by the new deluxe bait. When using it, a perfect catch will always reel in 3 of whatever fish you're catching, but each time the fish leaves your fishing bar, the amount you catch decreases by 1. So if it leaves 3 times, you'll fail the catch. It's a risk and reward that incentivizes mastering the fishing minigame, and is one of the additions in 1.6 that makes fishing a genuinely good moneymaker in the late game. To best utilize it, you'll want to find an area that has a good average price of fish without it being too hard. This is going to take a lot of playing around with to find the right spot for you. A couple of solid spots I've found are the Mountain Lake and Ginger Island. I specifically enjoy Ginger Island West during the day. At night, super cucumbers come out and they can be a pain, at which point I move to this pond for the blue discus. This has a really nice synergy with the Statue of Blessings from the Farming Mastery. If you happen to get the Blessing of Waters, which makes the first 3 fish you catch for the day significantly easier to catch, you can go for lava eels at the volcano. While normally it's very hard to use challenge bait on them, now they'll be as difficult as a rainbow trout, which isn't too bad. If you manage to catch 9 iridium lava eels, that's a fat 52,920 gold if you smoke them with the angler and artisan professions, for 3 fish catches. Of course, if you're goated, you can get that kind of money all the time, but I'm not. As a final note, just like with wild bait, catching multiple fish does not give you more experience. The game will always calculate it as if you only caught 1. Second up, we have the new tool, the Advanced Iridium Rod. Now, in addition to the 1 bait slot, you can now equip 2 bobbers at the same time. While that sounds simple, it enables you to do so much. I think the best way to explain it would be to give you a couple of example loadouts. The first one I call the minigame skipper. Not a fan of the fishing minigame. Use deluxe bait and a cork bobber for a super large fishing bar, and then add a barbed hook to get it to cling to all but the most difficult fish. You don't have to do a darn thing. Ideally, this will be used alongside a fishing buff like seafoam pudding, although that's true for pretty much all of the loadouts. And heck, you want to fully automate it? Get the auto hook enchantment on the rod. Yes, the Advanced Iridium Rod can be enchanted. At that point, literally just toss it and sit back and relax. So I wanted to test this build out, just so I could tell you how hard of a fish you could go for with this build and not have to touch anything. What do you think is on the hook right now? What's that fish that's about to be automatically caught? That's an octopus. So there you go. The Challenger loadout aims to make the most of challenge bait and get the highest chance we can to get perfect catches. So we'll of course rock the challenge bait, and then 2 cork bobbers to make our bar as big as possible. We'll also rock the Master enchantment for a little bit more bar sized and higher quality fish. This should allow you to go for a bit more expensive fish than you'd normally be able to. Next, if you're trying to find one specific fish for whatever reason, maybe cooking recipes or the fishing derbies, the Target loadout is for you. You're going to use targeted fish bait made from a bait maker. This means you'll have to catch at least one of the fish you're targeting without the bait. For bobbers, we're going to use 1 dressed spinner to speed up the catch time, and a sonar bobber to let go of anything that isn't the right fish. Or if you just want to catch anything that pops up, you can use another dressed spinner. And the idea here is to catch as many as we can and save time. Surprisingly, the auto hook enchantment is the best for that. Think about it this way, the average human reaction time is 0.6 seconds, so every time you hook a fish, you're saving 0.6 seconds of reacting. And last, the Legend Hunter. So there's a very specific strategy you can use that involves hunting for the relatives of the legendary fish during the short 3-day window of the extended family quest, from the walnut room. The most important thing here is the enchantment, which will be preserving. This is because we're going to want to use targeted bait, but a whole legendary fish is a lot to give up, so the preserving enchantment will stretch that out by saving the bait 50% of the time. It will also prevent the curiosity lure of being used up 50% of the time, which raises the chance of specifically catching rare fish, which includes all legendary fish other than the glacier fish. And last, a quality bobber, because you will not be getting perfect catches. And because we're not using any bar size increases, I'd say that seafoam pudding is a must-have here. I want to expand on this specific loadout because I think it's really interesting and a fun way to make some money. The best fish to go for if you think you can handle it is the Legend 2. Issue is, it can be a bit rarer than most other legendary fish, so every single part of this loadout is absolutely required, and you'll want to make sure that you can catch it every time you hook it. And there's a huge profit difference between gold and iridium quality, so the quality bobber cannot be compromised for a cork bobber, trap bobber, or anything like that. Personally, I like to go for the Son of the Crimson Fish. It's much more common, it's easier, and it sells for the second most out of all of the legendary fish. It tends to be a slightly less stressful experience. And let's not play around. I know you want to see it. The largest possible fishing bar. Well, first, during the Desert Festival, we're going to go here and order at least the shrimp. That gives us a +3 fishing buff. We can choose anything else. And the reason we grab that is because it's a +3 fishing, and we can actually stack that with seafoam pudding, with key seasoning of course, giving us another 5 levels. Our fishing rod here has the master enchantment, giving us effectively another level of fishing, and then deluxe bait and cork bobbers, all of which increase our bar size. Doesn't really matter what we catch. That is over half of the entire bar. We have reached more than half. Genuinely insane. Lastly, you now have a chance to find golden fishing chests. Very simply, in a case where a chest would show up, there's a 25% chance it is golden. This golden fishing chest, similar to the golden mystery box, leans towards what some of the game considers rarer items, mostly by completely ditching the 12% chance of mixed seeds and slightly lowering the chance of getting crafting materials, artifacts, gems, and equipment, while the chance for catching experience books, golden animal crackers, mystery boxes, and rice shoots are increased. There's also a 70% chance of one of the following items being in it in addition to what you would have caught normally, none of which are available in regular chests. These are iridium bars, the new 1.6 seeds, fairy dust, challenge bait, magnets, pearls, a couple of foods that give fishing buffs, and perhaps most importantly, star drop teas. This is the only way to essentially grind for them, as all other methods are quest rewards. So the rewards can be pretty good. You want to maximize your chances to get fishing chests. What do? Your base chance to find a chest at all is 15%. Your 2 largest buffs are going to be using magnet bait and having the pirate profession at level 10 fishing, both of which increase your chance by 15%. Now that you have 2 bobber slots, you can equip 2 treasure hunter bobbers, which add 5% each, adding 10% total. You may or not want to wait for a good luck day. At the best possible luck, you get a 5% boost, and at the worst possible luck, you get a 5% decrease, with an extra 1.25% if you have the special charm. Rabbit's foot at the Jojo Mart truck after finding the secret note. We go over this a lot, but it's still important. And then you get a 0.5% boost for every point of luck you have from food and drink buffs. Max this out by wearing 2 lucky rings, eating a magic rock candy, and drinking a ginger ale, ideally with key seasoning used on it to make it gold quality. That's a 9-point luck buff, giving you an extra 4.5%. So highest possible chances, you've done everything. You have a 65.75% chance of getting a treasure chest on each fish you catch. Unfortunately, we have to cut that down by 4 to determine how many golden fishing treasure chests you get. Then it would be 16.44%. So considering how long it takes to catch a fish, that's pretty dang rare. So this mastery is definitely only for you if you really love fishing, but it enables what is probably one of the best money-making methods just behind Starfruit Wine. 3 masteries down, now it's time to move on to Mining Mastery. There actually isn't a ton to talk about for Mining Mastery, so this section will be a bit shorter than the others. For Mining Mastery, we're given 2 crafting recipes in the Statue of the Dwarf King and the Heavy Furnace. and gem-bearing rocks will now give twice the gems. Starting out, let's check out the statue of the Dwarf King. It's one of the crazy expensive mastery recipes requiring 20 iridium bars to craft. Luckily, you'll only ever need one. Similar to the statue of blessings from Farming Mastery, you'll get a random buff each day, but this time you get to choose one of two options. And since there's only 5 possibilities total, you have a much higher chance of getting the one you want. Resetting the day will not change your choices, nor will having multiple statues. The options are +1 ore when mining nodes. By default, they all drop 1 to 3 ore. With this, it'll be 2 to 4, and if you combine it with the miner profession, 3 to 5 ore. In those respective situations, it'll either be a 50% increase or a 33% increase in ore. Greater chance to find geodes. This applies to regular geodes, frozen geodes, magma geodes, and omni geodes. Note that the increase is multiplicative, so for instance, if you had a 4% chance to find a geode, it's now 5%. This is important to mention because not all areas have the same chance for a certain type of geode to spawn. The greater chance to find coal increases the chance by 40%, multiplicative once again, for rocks in the mines. If you have the prospector profession, which increases the chance by 50%, this buff only increases it by 20%. Regardless of your profession, if you break a rock outside but not in the quarry, it only increases the chance by 3%. And if you do get a piece of coal from a rock outside, you then have a 2.5% chance to get a second piece of coal. Very convoluted, but those are the numbers. Greater chance to find ladders and shafts. This gives them a 25% higher chance, multiplicative. Once again, it's multiplicative because it's not a constant chance. It goes up the less rocks and enemies there are on a floor. The chance for a drop from monsters is constant though, and it's now 22% instead of 15%. Bombs cannot damage you. Exactly what it says, you no longer take damage from bombs. This also includes explosive ammo. So, let's go over all these. If you need geodes or coal, of course you can choose those. Bomb damage is pretty situational. Ideally, you're not taking damage from bombs anyway, but the +1 ore from nodes sits on top for me. The greater chance to find ladders and shafts is great, but if you're using staircases to drop anyway, which you should in a good Skull Caverns run, it's not going to have as much of an impact. The +1 ore is essentially a 33% increase in the amount of ore you'll get on average, which in turn is a 33% increase in profit if you choose to sell the bars. That's pretty huge. The heavy furnace crafting recipe isn't quite as bad. Just 3 iron bars, 50 stone, and 2 furnaces, which it's going to take the place of anyway. It takes 25 ore and 3 coal at once to produce 5 bars, with a 50% chance of producing 1 extra bar. This also applies to quartz. You'll either get 5 or 6 refined quartz, and for fire quartz, you'll get anywhere from 15 to 20 refined quartz. It runs the 50% chance to increase for each fire quartz, so you could get 18, you could get 17, it's weird. Be warned, if you're putting in a bouquet, it'll only accept 1 at a time, but it will still take 3 coal instead of 1. The time it takes to process all of these items is the same as their regular furnace. There's not really much to say here. You'll get 10% more bars on average, combined with the +1 ore buff from the statue of the Dwarf King. It goes hard. And last we have gem-bearing rocks granting twice the gems. This includes all of the gem nodes and the mystic gem node, which has a random chance of having any gem. This does not apply to cinder shards, calico eggs, or geode nodes. This does combo with the geologist profession, which has a 50% chance to double gems from gem nodes. So with those two together, you have a 50% chance to get 2 gems and a 50% chance to get 4 gems. Now you may see that and think, oh well, big deal. But gem hunting can be a genuinely good moneymaker now. You can also get a small boost from the book The Diamond Hunter, traded for 10 diamonds with the Volcano Dwarf, which gives you a 0.66% chance to drop a diamond from any rock. And this drop is affected by the geologist profession, but not the mastery buff. And just because I had to calculate it, this means that every rock you break, on average, earns you 9.6 gold in diamond money. Anyway, you'll now also get a lot more bang from your buck from mining buffs because they also increase the chance of gem nodes appearing. And finally, you can slap on the gemologist profession for a 30% sell price buff to all minerals. Now on average, a single diamond node will make you 2,932 gold. Oh, and I also did the calculations for all of the other gem nodes. The best way to find them will just be by doing skull cavern runs, not only for the highest chance for them to spawn, but also to gather iridium at the same time. For a more stress-free method, you can repeat the last 5 floors of the mines. The deeper you are, the higher chance you have to find diamonds. And if you're curious, the first floor of the skull cavern basically acts like floor 121 of the mines. Also, on top of all of the money making, remember that diamonds are loved by 8 NPCs and liked by everyone else. It's a very valuable item. Now for the last of the 5 skills, and it's definitely one of the most interesting. Instead of adding bonuses to previously existing systems in the game, Combat Mastery chooses to add a completely new system entirely. It adds the ability to find and equip trinkets, the crafting recipe for an anvil, which can reroll the stats of those trinkets, and the mini forge recipe, which is just a mobile version of the forge. So let's get the simplest one out of the way first, the mini forge. The crafting recipe is a little wild. 10 iron bars, 10 gold bars, 5 iridium bars, and the kicker, 5 dragon teeth. So while you could get this recipe before reaching Ginger Island, you won't be able to craft it until you've at least spent some time in the volcano. Other than being able to be placed anywhere, it works identically to the main forge. It still costs cinder shards, you can upgrade tools and weapons, and combine rings. If you want the full in-depth look at everything you can do at the forge, I have a separate guide for it. Although notably, there is a new type of enchantment for weapons in 1.6, innate enchantments, which can be rerolled with dragon teeth. Now onto the highlight, trinkets. This unlocks a new equipment slot exclusively for trinkets. Trinkets can be dropped from any enemy, the chance starts at 0.4%, and for each point of HP the enemy has, the chance increases by 0.001%. There's a bunch of more modifiers. If it's a flying enemy with more than 150 HP, it gets another 0.2% chance, and spiders in the dangerous mines specifically have a 0.5% lower chance. I don't know why. In theory, this makes the best enemy to hunt the royal serpents in the dangerous skull cavern, which has a max of a 1.65% chance to drop a trinket if it has the maximum number of tail segments, which is completely random. Each segment it has adds 50 HP. And the last modifier, daily luck can add or subtract around 0.4%, and luck buffs add 0.13% chance each. Personally, I think the dangerous mines, floors 40 to 70, is the best bet. The mushroom enemies spawn in huge groups, and the frostbats, being flying enemies, have a pretty good natural drop rate as well. As a final note for enemies, trinkets specifically aren't affected by the burglar's ring or the monster compendium buffs. You can also find them in crates and barrels, which have the same chances as monsters, minus the whole HP part. Plus, the deeper you are, the higher chance you have. Fun fact, the quarry mine is essentially set as floor 5000. So ignoring any luck modifiers, you will have a 2.4% chance to find trinkets and barrels there. Now that we've gone over the drops, what about the trinkets themselves? Let's go one by one. Note before we start that most trinkets have a stat that varies when it's dropped. The Basilisk Paw is the only exception to that. It makes you immune to debuffs, that's it. Fairies have 2 variable stats, the amount of time between heals and heal power. The heal power is essentially a multiplier that goes into the formula that decides how much you'll be healed by. The heals from level 5 are essentially 50% stronger than level 1, and added in one of the later updates, fairies have cosmetic variances as well. The frog egg summons a frog companion that will eat enemies that get close to it. It doesn't have any varying stats, but it does come in a bunch of different colors. A couple of important notes, enemies eaten by the frog will not drop any items and will not count towards the monster slayer goals. The golden spur gives you a speed boost equivalent to a coffee buff each time you get a critical hit. The amount of time the buff lasts can vary from 5 to 10 seconds. The ice rod shoots a slow orb that will freeze any enemies that touch it. There's 2 varying stats with this one, how long between each shot, which can be anywhere from 3 to 5 seconds, and the freeze duration, anywhere from 2 to 4 seconds. It goes through walls, so it can possibly freeze enemies that are out of reach, which can be annoying. Be wary. The magic quiver shoots magic arrows at nearby enemies. Not only are the stats themselves variable, but the magic quiver itself has a few different variants that affects how those stats vary. You can see all of the specific stats in the window on the left. There's lots of possibilities. And last, the parrot egg. It gives enemies a chance to drop 250 gold, and the chance is dependent on its level. 10%, 20%, 30%, and 40% for levels 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively. Crazy thing is, if the game rolls that the enemy drops gold, it will roll again and again until it fails, adding 250 gold to the drop each time. Also note that you can only get certain levels of parrot eggs after reaching a certain threshold of total money earned. and you can check this on the inventory page of your menu. There is one more trinket, but it's not combat related. The magic hair gel can be sold by Alex during the Desert Festival for 100 calico eggs, and all it does is add a prismatic effect to your hair. I will say, out of the group, my personal favorites are the Ice Rod, the Golden Spur, and most of all, the Parrot Egg. A lot of the others tend to mess with you a little bit, like the magic arrows knock back enemies, kind of throwing you off. The Ice Rod is fantastic for defense, but sometimes it freezes enemies outside of your reach, so you can't knock them out. And as much as I love the little frogs, I want those enemy drops. And the Parrot Egg is one of the only ones that has absolutely no downside. So what if you got a trinket but you didn't get the variant that you wanted? That's where the anvil comes in. For the cheap price of 50 iron bars to craft it and the cheap price of 3 iridium bars to use it, that was sarcasm, you can re-roll your trinket to change its stats. This is to say, re-rolling won't always mean that you get a better trinket. It is left up to chance each time. Now this means that you could go through an entire stack of iridium bars trying to get the perfect re-roll. And this is especially true if you're trying to get something like the perfect variant of the magic quiver, or the prismatic frog. But at the very least, you can restart your day to try re-rolling again for a different result. And that's it. That's all of them. I hope I've properly demystified some of the more complicated systems added in the 1.6 update. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and good night.